Scott, it's great to have you here. Welcome to Building Builders podcast. We've known each other for many years, have got the pleasure of being able to work together, and really happy to be doing this with you here today.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's exciting.
So Scott, for those who don't know you, you've got a really impressive background in construction. Why don't we just take a minute and, you can kind of share with everyone what you've been up to. Yeah,
absolutely. It's been a long career of construction. I think it kind of all started being living out in the country and having a entrepreneurial father. We always had construction equipment around, tractors. So I was, working with that stuff at a young age. Our family business was modular homes and sales. So pretty early on, I was using equipment to move and set mobile homes, and really got familiar with it. Later on, really got into the large, heavy equipment, earth moving, working with, rock trucks and dozers and excavators. Had some big projects working with companies like Panasonic to do the solar wind farms in southern Ontario. So it was a fun career for sure. It was a great time.
And you've I think you were out at West doing some of that very heavy earth moving as well, right?
Not out west, just mostly southern Ontario. But I've got a lot of coworkers and friends that did end up going out there. It was a move I thought about, but never ended up doing.
Right. So you, that's cool. So the majority of this work has been here in southern Ontario, and lots of heavy earth moving, and it's something I want to cover later. But really cool that you've made this transition over to construction tech as well.
Yeah, it was. I think taking advantage of opportunities and what you guys presented, it was really interesting. I thought it was a great idea. I loved what I was doing. It was a hard change, but it was. I think it was a challenge that I wanted to accept. And it's been great. I've had an amazing time at Dozer over the 5 years. I do still miss operating. I think you're maybe the same, that any opportunity to get into a little mini excavator or a skid steer even is I always try and take advantage. It's something that I'm still passionate about, but try and take advantage of any opportunity to get back into a piece of equipment. I do watch some shows where you see the big excavators and dozers, and I get a little jealous that, I don't get to do it anymore and play with those big toys.
When we first met, we were doing snow removal together, and it happens to be one of those days here in Ontario. Lots of snow on the way, lots of freezing rain. I'm not missing the anxiety that went along with snow removal, but I am missing being in that equipment. How about yourself?
Yeah, same. I still have the same. I'm sure you do too. Even though I'm not fully in operating mode anymore with it, I still track storms. I see that something's coming up, and we do have a lot of winter rentals, so I prepare myself for issues. But I do miss some of those late nights pushing snow. And this sounds maybe a little funny for people, but 3 o'clock in the morning pushing snow out around the city. You kind of have the city to yourself. The snow's falling. It's a really fun time. I always enjoyed that, and I do miss it. If somebody gave me the opportunity, like I said before, I think I would do it just for the fun of it. It was always a good time.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. So on that note, Scott, let's talk more about your time as an operator. There's probably some best and worst moments. Does anything come to mind over your career? Those best and worst.
Yeah, I think there's always great moments. I think some of the most interesting projects were, like I mentioned before, working with a couple large companies for Panasonic. They were doing wind farms in southern Ontario, and we were building the crane pads and the roads for the access. And that was a great collaboration with some of the large crane companies. I mean, these things are lifting, 70 ton, 200 feet in the air. We had to have a really good base and good materials, and it was a lot of fun to watch that grow and see it progress. It was a very interesting project. Really learned a lot. There's also worked on the 407 extension project. That was also very interesting. Highway, big cuts, huge fills, a lot of equipment. That's probably one of the biggest projects I've worked on. You go out and get out in the morning, and there's just a train of excavators and dozers and rock trucks all leaving out. It's like a parade. It was a really fun job, but there were good times and worse. Probably the worst time was for that project on the 407. We got into some material that it didn't matter what you put the equipment in. It was just, they were getting buried. They were getting swamped, stuck. You're constantly pushing rock trucks out. We got into a really blue clay material that was actually making the excavator operators seasick, because there was no stability in the ground. So it was actually kind of rocking like a boat every time you moved the excavator. And guys actually had to get out and just stand on the ground and take a minute to orient themselves. It was a pretty rough scenario, and we did that for about a month before we got through that material. So that was not the most enjoyable experience. That, and also I think, and nobody loves the breakdowns that are associated with heavy equipment. We know it's going to happen. You have your maintenance plan, and you take care of the equipment and you maintain it best of your ability. But eventually they're going to break down, and that always presents issues and delays that you have to work with.
Scott, in that situation where you're working through the clay on the 407, kind of thinking from a safety perspective, and you've got this train of rock trucks, how do you communicate with each other? When somebody sees something, how does everyone communicate and share their experiences, or provide some kind of warning or caution to each other?
Some job sites, it's requirements to have communication devices, CB radios. This scenario we didn't, but we were really lucky to have some really good experienced operators, people that knew what to do and could see things happening and react appropriately. If somebody was getting stuck in a spot, an excavator or a dozer could come over and patch up or fix the haul road. The rock truck operators, they're experienced enough to know to avoid soft spots. So it was just a lot of good experience. Also some hand gestures and reminding guys and letting people know what to watch out for at the morning meetings and the safety meetings. We were always very diligent to let guys know that, hey, this is getting to be a safety issue. Be very aware of your surroundings and who's around, and leave everybody just a little extra space, because we know things are going to happen today. So that was the priority, is just being safe and being very aware. I think that's the biggest thing in any heavy equipment position, is really got to keep your eyes open and see what's going on, and keep track of people, know where they are at all times, because it only takes a minute sometimes to get in some trouble. So just a lot of awareness.
That leads really well into my next question. I wanted to ask you if you have any best tips, best practices for equipment operators, common mistakes, inefficiencies that can be avoided.
I think the safety aspect of it sometimes seems a little silly, work boots and wearing your PPE equipment at all times. Sometimes you'll forget it in a piece of equipment, or forget it at home, but it's really important to follow that. It's just going to keep you safe, and it's going to keep others safe. Just being aware and not becoming that complacent operator that, just really seems to know what's going on and then ends up making mistakes. Everybody's going to make a mistake. You just really got to limit it and make sure it's not something that's going to endanger somebody. They're big pieces of equipment. I definitely, after a while, noticed that I would get very relaxed, and it's amazing how relaxed you can get with 100,000 pound piece of iron. It becomes an extension of yourself, and you can get pretty relaxed and get very comfortable with it. But if you're not always aware, you can get in trouble. You can really hurt something or somebody pretty quick. So just to be aware of what you're doing and what type of equipment you're running.
We talk on this podcast a fair bit about management styles and effective leaders. Are there any sort of great experiences that you can speak to about great leaders that you've run into in your time in construction, and maybe what made them great leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. The great leaders and great managers, guys that can show, aren't just going to get out there and tell you what to do. They're going to show you, and they're not afraid to still get dirty. We all know that it's a grind to work your way from a little packer and a shovel to a piece of equipment. That's a big move. And then, the next move is being a grade foreman or somebody that's, back into a pickup truck and doing some more management. But it really does show a lot and help guys to see the managers and the owners and stuff like that get out there and get dirty. I had a great foreman for construction for many years, and if we were down a guy or if somebody called in sick, he had to leave for any reason, he was the first one that was in the piece of equipment, and he would work just as hard and just as long as everybody else, and that really went a long ways. He had a lot of good relationships with his operators because of that. I think the exact same thing with yourself. You were never, when we were pushing snow, you were never afraid to get out there and, take a tractor and go out. Even if it was one that I was warmed up and had all cleaned up and ready to go, as happened one day. I'm not sure if you know that or not, but
I don't think I knew that.
I went into work, and I'm particular. I like my equipment clean and windows clean. So I went in and got it all ready, and it was warmed up and ready. It was a cold night, and I went over to grab my lunch for the night, and as I was walking back, there goes Kevin driving down the road in the tractor I had all ready to go. So he had a nice warm tractor for the night. I went and got in a cold one and carried on. But
sorry about that, Scott.
No, it's fine.
I'm sure I thought somebody had just come back in and I was probably racing out to solve some kind of emergency.
I thought it was funny. Apologies. I just said, hey, well, it's his tractor. I can't really complain. So, but I mean, I had also admired that, it was late at night. You could have been at home and tucked away with the family, but you were out there doing what needed to get done. So that definitely goes a long ways in any industry, but I think especially construction, because it can be a grind sometimes. It's not always an easy industry to be in.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Sorry for stealing your tractor. But I think the message comes across loud and clear that, leaders, it's important for leaders to get involved and, be part of the team, rather than just kind of, sitting up top and, hands off. It's really important to just, build trust with the team, and know how to operate the equipment and, be there as a team member. So, great insight there. Scott, a little more on winter season. So, that it can be tough, right? It's as you said, it's cold. It's literally the worst conditions, right? It's either really, really cold and maybe it's -20 and it's dry, and batteries won't start, that kind of stuff, or it's cold, maybe -2 to -4, rainy, wet, just tough conditions out there. Winds blowing, sometimes you can't see. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about this a little bit more. What's it like to be an operator, in the wintertime out there in the dark and the cold?
It's just like you said, the conditions vary. Everybody, I think, maybe has their preference. If it's, like you said, -2, raining, cold, you get wet. I think that's probably the worst conditions for me. I get very uncomfortable at that point. -20, dry. That seems terrible for some people, but I am a little more comfortable that way. But it's tough. It is. Equipment, the maintenance of the equipment becomes a huge benefit. You have to maintain the equipment at that point. It needs to be greased, batteries maintained, started. The winter season, we get big gaps where there's nothing going on and everybody gets really comfortable and say, hey, this is great. We haven't had to push snow in a little while. But then when that -20 comes and we got to go out and do our job, you have to make sure that everything's going to start and run. And when it doesn't, your day can change very quickly. Working outside, cold hands, cold feet, wind blowing. It can be a little miserable at times, but I enjoyed it sometimes. There's always something to tackle. And once you get going, it was fun. I really, really did enjoy it. The weather was always a challenge though.
Yeah, so many things that would be unexpected, but at the same time, I think the job of the business and the operators to try and expect these things. Did you ever run into the diesel fluid gelling up?
Yeah, I remember. I remember one day I came in and I think out of a dozen tractors or so that were out and about around the city, in different areas. I remember going around and trying to start them, and just a myriad of issues, gelled or frozen fuel, which just is never going to let a unit start. It just, the only way to help that is to thaw it. The dead batteries, again, sometimes that's operators not fully understanding the mechanics, letting the glow plugs cycle multiple times before starting it definitely helps. But I know I've seen a few scenarios that in construction even too, because we will have construction sites that will go throughout the winter, and it comes down to the silliest things, not parking the engine into the wind. Turn a tractor to so that the back of the tractor is getting the wind. It may only be a few degrees, but it stops that driving snow from getting into those little crevices, and it can definitely be a tough time to get things to start. You start to learn little tricks and things to help you with that. But sometimes a mechanic is just your best friend. Sometimes you just need a little help, but it can be challenging.
Just a little more on operating in the winter. It's definitely mentally tough. Do you have any tips for managing that?
Yeah, it is tough. You're out there, the winter, you're usually waking up when it's dark, you're going to bed when it's dark, or just, becoming light. Cause most of the storms come through the evening. So it is tough. Just getting good rest. Again, maintaining the equipment so that you're not out, in the freezing cold. Funny, silly little tips and tricks that I've always used over the seasons. Coffee. There's always a myriad of coffee cups in snow equipment. The funny thing that I've always used, and this works for driving and operating, sunflower seeds. I was always had a big bag of those Spitz sunflower seeds. There's something that just keeps your mind going, and as soon as I stopped eating those, I would get tired. But as soon as I started eating them again, that seemed to be always my little hidden secret, is lots of sunflower seeds. But good equipment too can ease the fatigue in construction and snow equipment. If you've got the right equipment for the job you're doing, it takes a lot of the operator fatigue out of it, and makes things a lot easier. You're not working as hard.
Great tips. We should have had a sunflower seed sponsor on this show.
Right.
But yeah, thanks. So Scott, back to construction tech. You've been working at Dozer for 5 years now. Mm-hmm. You're a huge part of the growth. What's the biggest difference between working on site versus being in the office and part of a construction tech company?
The big difference is, the learning curve from the transition, that was pretty steep. It was a challenge I really wanted to accept. Operating is a lot of fun, and I always enjoyed the specs and details of the equipment. So that really helped me transition to the tech side of it and what we're doing at Dozer. I love to be, a pseudo product expert. I like to know and read up on equipment. So I think that's helped me with the transition. I've also never been much of a tech guy. I relied on people with more information to help me, set up my cell phone and things like that. So that was a lot of fun to learn all that. Honestly, the first few days at Dozer, I was given a lot of tech and a lot of information, and it it was overwhelming a little bit, but fun to dig into all that info and to find out and find a way to apply my operator knowledge and my product knowledge to what we're doing and what Dozer's all about. And I hope and I think it's been beneficial to teach people, a little bit about the little nuances of the equipment and help Dozer move forward and be is knowledgeable and aware of what we're renting, and help the customers, because I think that's hugely important, getting the customers what they need for the project.
Yeah, for sure, Scott. I know that the team and customers definitely value the real life experience in the equipment, and knowing that there's people here on the other side of the email, text message, phone call, that have been in the equipment, know how to operate it, and can speak to the real life challenges. Scott, how do you think other people could make that transition? What skills should they highlight in making that move?
I think the biggest, for me, it was really wanting to make the change. I think the having an open mind and the want to try new things. I knew that being an operator was a passion of mine, and I loved doing it. But this was a great challenge and a good, I think just a really fun experience to, a great road to go down. Being open to, learning, asking questions. I think asking questions, I've had many conversations with, all the departments at Dozer, learning about, what we're doing, what the technology is, and trying to understand it and see how I can work with that or apply that. I mean, I was not a proficient with computers to the point that I am now, but I attribute that to just asking questions and not being afraid to let people know you're not sure. You don't always have to be the expert. There's experts out there, and asking those questions and getting that information, and sharing is definitely going to help you succeed. But just being willing to make the move and to really accept a new challenge, I think, is the biggest part. Everything else will just fall into place. You can learn anything.
Sounds like there's some characteristics and personality traits that really transfer over from being in the seat of a tractor or an excavator or rock truck to being inside and working at a construction tech company.
Yeah, I think that you go from, people in construction are always really eager to move to the next piece of equipment and learn something. So I don't see why the transition to tech, for me, was the exact same thing. It was just another piece of equipment, another forum to learn. So it was, I think that transition could be made fairly easily.
So Scott, as a construction tech company, we always like to ask people, what's your favorite piece of machinery?
It's pretty easy for me. And I only got to operate it very, just a few amount of times, but the Caterpillar D6T is just my favorite piece of equipment. For large earth moving, it's kind of the multi-purpose tool. It's a Swiss Army knife for moving dirt. You can do some good grading with it. You can bulk a decent amount of material for some short runs. They're just a very versatile piece of equipment, and they just look good. I think they're a really good looking piece of equipment. I was never fortunate enough to get into anything much bigger. I've worked with D9s, but never got to operate them. Those are just big, impressive units, but you don't get a lot of them in Southern Ontario. So I think the D6T is definitely my personal favorite.
Awesome. Yeah, I've always wanted to operate one of those. That's one of the ones that I haven't been able to get into yet, but yeah, get it for sure. Hear people speak very highly. Scott, I want to thank you for being on our Building Builders podcast. It was great chatting with you today. Is there any way for people to get in touch with you? Any social media channels?
So I'm on LinkedIn, but you can also find Dozer at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was a great experience. Had a lot of fun. Love talking about construction and equipment. So anytime.
Awesome. Thanks again, Scott. Really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you.